Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dan, the voice behind ThatKaitoDan, and welcome to my review for RWBY Volume 6, Episode 11, The Lady in the Shoe. Before we begin, if you didn't see my guest appearance on Shinoob and Corey's RWBY podcast, The Boopcast, you can check it out through the recorded version that's linked in the description down below and in the card above, where we talked about Episode 10, shipping, critiques, and much more. So be sure to give that a check out if you haven't done so yet. Also, to celebrate the channel reaching over 5,000 subscribers recently, I'm going to be doing a Q&A video, and I need questions from you guys to answer. For more details on that, follow the link in the description down below. And as always, please be sure to watch the episode in question first before watching this review, to support the show and avoid spoilers. Let's start off then with the viewer comments from last week, beginning with Senshi, who gave praise to the sweet scene with Blake and Yang and how well it reflected both their personal growths from certain issues they've had, while Darren Rolock touched on a neat connection that could be found with Crow's breakdown and a notable scene with his niece and Jean from Volume 4. And finally, AC Gears and Arms has a pretty cool concept for where our heroes might have to bunker down once they hopefully reach Atlas in one piece, as well as how Cordovin's attitude sums up the cold-hearted kingdom. Don't forget that if you want to see your thoughts possibly featured in the next review, leave your comments down below, and tune in next week to see if they get featured. So last week, we had our kickstart for the volume's closing matchups, with Cordovin going off the rails in a literal big way, and Adam finally returning after stalking his way through the season so far. Promising signs then for some exciting fights to come, but was this latest episode able to build off from that, or did it fail to deliver? Let's find out. We open with Cordovin boasting once again about the might of Atlas as she looks to take out RWBY and company. But the team gets some time to form a strategy thanks to some quick thinking from Weiss, with I think her first use of rock dust. Anyway, Jean, the tactical whiz that he is, points out that as much as the mech's size and strength will play into Cordovin's favour, it's also a weakness, since it's obviously made to take out bigger foes than just 8 people and 1 airship. Though I wonder if his comment about large sea-based Grim is a slight bit of foreshadowing to a possible fight if things keep getting hostile near Argus. Kraken Grim, anyone? With their own size advantage as a positive, the group make use of it and the numbers game to split up and strike in teams. Team Juniper will distract and attack from the cliffside, while Oscar will join Maria and Crow in the air to be the team's eyes in the sky. And RWBY will take center point with Weiss making the most of their mobility skills to confront the mech while everyone else finds a way to ground it. A sound plan indeed, and it comes with the added bonus of a brand new vocal track, which is currently called Big Metal Shoe, another reference to Cordovin's Fable illusion. And for as short as this little snippet is, it's a welcome addition to the fight. Not only for the energetic, caffeine-esque beat that accompanies some of these really stylish slow-mo shots and missile hopping, but that same rockin' tune works really well with the lyrics in symbolizing the rebellious heroes taking on the regimented, militaristic operative, avoiding it becoming a blood-pumping battle track with no thematic connection to the scene that it's placed in. But things go bad pretty quickly once Cordovin reveals the mech's dust shields, powered by hard light dust. The first time I believe we've heard of this kind of dust, but I imagine that it's pretty much the same thing that powers Velvet's weapon copies, concentrated light particles that take physical shape when used through machines or weaponry, unlike holograms, which is just a light projection. A nifty trick, and it makes sense that the Dust Kingpins in Atlas are able to pull such stuff off and use it for their military benefit. Though this now means that the team has to disable those shields and do so without getting squished like Crow almost did, or getting blasted away by the massive cannon. I do like the little visual gag by the way of Oscar trying to understand RWBY's video game reference of where the mech's weak spot might be, almost like the farm boy's never played a video game in his life. But while he manages to clue in on some way that the team can strike back, we miss out on hearing it after he tries to warn RWBY about the incoming blast. No love for Weiss, Oscar? For shame. Thankfully the pair are okay thanks to Weiss's Queen Lancer summon, and thanks to a well-aimed strike from RWBY, the mech finally gets sent crashing into the cliffside, which sends shockwaves that even the folks in Argus can feel. Like I said last review, this whole mess can be doing good for the current mindset of the locals, and if this keeps up, there's a very good chance that we'll see not only further tension between the kingdoms, but also a possible Grim attack, and that's not good at all when everyone's too busy dealing with this fight to focus on protecting the city. With the mech grounded, Team Juniper can finally make an impact, and both Ren and Crow eventually come across the mech's shield generator. A few gunshots later, and now the big tin can is defenseless to dust shots, and Nora's demands for her man to come back safe and sound. Nice to know that even in a scenario such as this, the Renora ship won't stop being adorable. But just when things are starting to look up for the heroes, Cordovin smacks away Nora and Jean, who barely survived with just their auras being broken thanks to the blonde semblance protecting them, before Cordovin then shoots down the group on the Lancer, with RWBY barely able to avoid a dip in the ocean. With everyone else down, Maria tries to fire away at the giant with the airship, only for the missile to be caught in its hand, which I will admit is a moment that did catch me off guard. Not so much for the attack failing, but more so for how the mech caught the missile without it blowing up in its grip. I get the intent behind the bit, and it's probably something that the show doesn't want me to be thinking about too hard, but it is a shame that this misdirection does require some logic to be ignored when it's this big diversion to the attack that then leads to the missile being flung back at Maria and Oscar, their fate unknown as the scene cuts to black. Even with that slightly confusing closing sequence, this was still a fun opening contest that harkened back to some past large-scale battles such as the fight with the Petrogigas, the Breach, and the fight with the corrupted Paladins, though obviously on a much bigger scale. One of its major strengths is the fact that everyone got to play some part in the fight. Sure, folks like RWBY, Weiss, and Crow got more to do, but they didn't leave the others on the bench. Everyone added something to the battle, be it some new tactical input or their own attacks. It felt like a team effort working with each individual's abilities, and following the group's recent turmoil, it is so satisfying to see such a strong team synergy, especially with this kind of fight concept where teamwork shines super well if done right. Major praise has to go to the camera work too for the variety of smooth tracking shots, making the most of the open environment and the opponent's large build. The balance as well between the lighthearted quips and the focused seriousness was fairly even too, even amongst the many colourful lines and funny expressions. Cordovin still felt like a somewhat viable threat. It did lose some momentum in the final moments, but overall, I would say for what is obviously the undercard fight of this episode, it was certainly entertaining enough that it more than outweighed any of the negatives, and I'm definitely curious to see where it goes next with this group on the ropes, and the longevity of the bout surely leading to further concerns down the line regarding Argus's safety and the backlash towards the Atlas military. But we press on to the main event, the continued clash between former partners Blake and Adam, as the two trade blows amongst the forest trees, and it's just as fast paced and nail biting as last week's episode, again making good use of the environment for some slick movement and unique offense, most notably when Blake opts for running away from the fight, much to Adam's anger. He does look to land a good shot on Blake at one point, but this only disrobes the catgirl of her coat, which actually makes for a badass look if it weren't for the cold that they're going to be facing moving forward. And soon the duo end up near a waterfall where they really start to trade blows, making the most of their speed and skill with their blades. At one point, Adam's sword gets caught in Blake's sheath, forcing Adam to take on Blake with just his blush sheath gun, which is a really creative idea, one of many throughout this entire sequence that deserves special mention and props for the creative folks behind it. but Adam regains his sword soon enough, causing Blake to lose her sheath blade in the process, and the renegade overpowers her with his brutal slashes and his equally cutting insults, calling Blake a selfish coward that's forcing him to be this violent with her because of her continued efforts to defy him. Of course, he's as delusional as Blake says, since he's the one that's constantly causing the pair of them to come to blows, but in his eyes, it's warranted because of her, and he furthers his aggressive actions by pointing out the scar from where he stabbed her back at Beacon, before violently slashing through Gamble's shroud, breaking the blade in two. Damn, that's the first time we're seeing one of the main character weapons get broken like this, not counting Yang losing one of her gauntlets with her arm of course. But it's a rather curious note that it's Blake's weapon that gets destroyed, when I distinctly recall one thing that Monty was teasing about before Volume 3 came around was a possible upgrade to Gamble's shroud. Understandably, Monty's death caused some delays to such a prospect happening around that time, but could we finally see this upgrade or something similar in the near future? It would be pretty sweet to see some upgrades for the group in general as they prepare for bigger, tougher fights to come. And perhaps their trip to Atlas, the tech mecca of Remnant, could be the location for such a thing. But that is then, this is now. With Blake defenseless and unable to fight back, Adam looks to twist the knife one last time before the final blow, with some words about the pain that he's felt ever since Blake left him. A pain that Adam says hurts far more than anything that he suffered before or since. To Adam, that feeling of being abandoned by the one person that he held on to closely far outweighs any abuse or physical scarring that he's had to deal with over the years, and he wants Blake to know this before he ends this fight. It's a heavy message in of itself, and it touches just on how strong Adam's vendetta with Blake is. But the mention of scars also has a double meaning, as Adam takes off the blindfold and finally reveals his full face for the very first time. No, there's no silver eyes underneath. Instead, he's actually got a nasty scar over his left eye, thanks to a brand that was burned onto his face. It's definitely not what I expected to see, and the sight of Adam's wounded left eye and the scar itself is horrifyingly striking. But I do think it is worth the build up in my opinion, mostly because of the mark's pattern and what it's hinting at relating to Adam's past. The scar bears the letters SDC, clearly meaning the Schnee Dust Company. And since most cases of marking an item with a brand such as this is to indicate ownership, it could be suggesting that Adam was once a ex-Fornus slave or a prisoner under the company's ownership, perhaps working in the company's dust mines. Now we're starting to understand why this man has such a venomous hatred for humans, largely aimed towards those involved with the Schnees and their dust empire. Because he was once treated just like their property, something that was controlled and owned like the very dust that they have a monopoly over. And the fact that it's also burned on his face makes such a terrible fate even more painful to have gone through, as he'll forever have to live with those wounds as a lasting reminder of his past. No wonder the guy seemed to have some twisted joy in attacking the Schnee Dust Company workers in the past. It without question adds further reason to despise the current state of the company under Jacques' leadership if he's advocating such vile treatment of the Fornus. And it does legit make me feel some genuine empathy towards Adam for having to go through with it. It's not right at all, and it does deserve some justified backlash towards those responsible. But here's the key point. It doesn't justify Adam's violent actions that has resulted in terrorist plots, senseless murders, and otherwise destructive schemes that harms innocents and causes further divide between the races. It's misplaced payback and retaliation that blames the many for the actions of the few, and fighting back with killing and threats does nothing but perpetuate more negative feelings towards the Fornus. There are better ways to challenge the abusers, but Adam turning his anger into others is not the right way. It doesn't make the suffering that he's faced right or fair, that's for sure, but you can't fight hate with hate. Though, yeah, it's quite the sickening sight, and a sharp reminder of just how broken the company is compared to its more positive days under Nicholas Schnee. God knows how Weiss is going to be able to deal with trying to rebuild the bridges that have already been burnt between the company and those affected the same way that Adam was. It should prove to be quite the dramatic scenario to see her overcome all the same, when she finally seeks to reclaim the company from her father's clutches, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. But back to the issue with Adam and Blake. Again, the pain that Adam's gone through is understandable, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But Adam's problem is that because of his past, it's led to him feeling like he's always the victim, never the one to blame. And that's what's causing his hatred towards Blake to continue spiraling on without an end. Blake left him because she couldn't stand his toxic nature anymore. It was causing her tons of emotional grief as Adam continued to drag her down with him, manipulating her compassion with hollow words to make her feel at ease and stay by his side. Once she did break free, Adam saw it as Blake throwing him and their relationship away, not understanding her motivations, and rather than accepting that he's the reason why the two fell apart, he threw the blame back at her, soon deciding that because of this, she deserves her own form of torment and pain as a result. He's a mentally broken individual that, among his many other issues, is blinded by bitterness towards Blake, now that she's shown that she is stronger without him, and after being humiliated by Blake recently, he's had enough. He wants Blake to believe that everything that they've gone through is her fault, that she should never have stood up to him or tried to move on from him, and because of her selfishness, she will die alone with only herself to blame. Thankfully though, throughout most of this fight, Blake's been playing smart, having caught on to a notable sound during their scrap thanks to her heightened Faunus hearing, thus explaining her bigger focus on buying time and avoiding much of the fighting. And after just managing to get away from a repeat of her stabbing a beacon, Blake stands tall, challenging Adam's claims that she's alone. Not when she has people to support her, like Yang, who, having finally managed to find Blake, makes quite the impact by crashing Bumblebee into Adam, sending him flying, though sadly the bike then soars off into the river below. Man, first Gamble's Shroud and now Bumblebee. We're losing a lot of staple items in this episode. Though I did start to wonder recently just how much longer we will have to see Yang lug her bike around. If this is the end for the much-loved vehicle, at least it went out with a bang. Though there is one thing that I wish this episode did differently with that bike and with Yang, and that is not having those quick shots of her riding away before her proper appearance. Yes, of course we all knew that she was on her way after last episode, but having the suspense of Blake's clash with Adam be paused several times for these brief glimpses of Yang getting closer, I think was a bit of a small misstep that could have been taken out to better leave us unsure if she'll make it in time before Blake got seriously hurt. Either way, Yang's finally here, backed by a grand remix of Armed and Ready for the added sense of triumphant bravery. And with Blake needing some time to recover from her blows, it's finally time to see the true fight between Yang and the one person who crushed her body and spirit not too long ago. And man oh man, is this fight something special. I'm not gonna mince words with you guys. What follows may be one of the best fights in the entire series, at least in my opinion. A beautiful contest full of incredible animation and top-drawer emotional direction. I'm just one of the many who has been looking forward to this fight, and I'm spoiling my opinion on it right away by saying that it was definitely worth the wait. There's a lot of thought put into how both of these two fight. Right from the start, the emotionally unhinged Adam unleashes a barrage of ferocious attacks, including some after-image combos that is new for the character, but looks super cool and adds to his extreme aggression towards someone standing in his way. Yet even with a flurry of semblance-powered blasts and non-stop sword slashes being sent her way, Yang's holding her ground extremely well, an early sign that Adam's the one whose actions are being fueled more by his emotions, while Yang is now opting for not letting her emotions get the better of her, so she can act with a clearer head, just like Tai taught her to in Volume 4. Once she does get an opening, we then get a couple of some classic moves from her arsenal. The Dempsey roll, a fiery uppercut, some chain grapple striking, and a heavier focus on kicks. Though the highlight move of this fight has to be her rapid fire punching combo. It's visually fantastic, and the audio mixing gives it that extra oomph, and I also appreciate the little details of having her ammo scatter around her in the middle of the blows. Terrific stuff! Despite the Spitfire's own personal demons and hatred for the man who robbed her of so much, Yang's fighting with a much more mentally stronger game plan than we usually attribute to her, showcasing just how much she's learned from her failures in the past and the lessons that she's been taught by her father, which allows her to better process the new information that Blake shares about Adam's semblance. The ability to absorb energy from attacks into his sword, which he can then use to strike back much stronger. It's similar to Yang's special power, acting as another layer tying the two together. But as Yang notes herself, it's the fact that he avoids taking damage while she takes it head on that says a lot about the two characters and where their differences lie. Yang's willing to put herself through pain to protect those in harm's way, whereas Adam is all about hurting people, unwilling to put himself into the crossfire for the sake of others. And in another example of just how Yang is avoiding letting her emotions cloud her judgment, when she then lunges in at Adam akin to a desperation act in Volume 3, she throws Adam for a loop by using her recoil blast to switch attacks. She's grown from the past, while Adam is too anchored by it to do anything else instead of just getting his ass kicked. Even when he does regain control and has Yang on her knees, the mere sight of seeing concern on the face of Blake and seeing just how far Yang's willing to go to protect her causes his rage to snap further, leading to him unleashing a wicked cool yet monstrous energy blast at Yang, which she barely managed to defend herself with from either falling into the river below or getting more than just a few grazes on her arm. Definitely surprised Yang managed to take such a blow so well, which says a lot about her incredible defensive powers. Yet despite her own feelings about wanting payback on Adam, Yang's sole focus is just simply protecting Blake. And as such, she offers Adam one last chance to leave both of them alone. She's not here to strictly hurt Adam, she's just here to stop him tormenting their lives any further. Though Adam sees Yang's shaking hand and tries to stoke Yang's ire by manipulating her fear and anger, trying to tempt her into making a rash decision just like a beacon. However, before Yang can take the bait, Blake comforts her partner by taking her hand in hers and sharing the words that she meant to say back at the Brunswick Farms to ease her worries and show her dedication to standing by her. She knows Yang doesn't want to be seen as weak, but she cares for her all the same. She also knows that Yang would do anything to defend her and keep Blake safe when her past or her concerns weigh her down. This is where their relationship is so damn strong, whereas Blake's time with Adam was extremely weak. He never treated her like an equal, only his emotional crutch to cling on to. There was no respect, there was no compassion, there was no support given in return, and this episode ends with the Bumblebee pair showing that together, they will face any pain that Adam or the world throws their way, because they care about each other that much. It's a truly heartwarming sight to see these two standing so proud beside the other after things went sour in the past and their wounds caused friction and uncertainty. To see them confront this lone figure that's haunted the pair of them so deeply side by side just warms my heart, and it's a powerful moment of development for each girl respectively, as well as their relationship in general. Whether you see this as a romantic gesture or not, though there's definitely been a surplus of that in this season so far, you can't deny that these two do love each other very much, and it's so rewarding to see how far this bond has come through all the highs and lows, especially in this epic confrontation with their shared tormentor, capping off a simply stunning fight with one of the best moments in the pair's long personal stories. Now that they are standing united, it's going to be very exciting to see just how they cope with Adam as a duo, and what this side does to the already emotionally unstable Adam. Will they overcome him at long last, or will he live to see another day? I'm still of the mindset that it's best for Adam to die or have his story end here, as I can't see this conflict being dragged out for another volume, especially after this landmark moment for the two girls. I just hope the conclusion of that fight is just as remarkable to watch as this part of the fight was. That's not to say that this was the only good point of the episode. Even the less emotionally engaging fight with Cordovin's mech had plenty to offer, with spectacular action sequences, an electric charge to it that made me enjoy almost every second, and the animation was definitely well crafted to fit one of the show's biggest battles in terms of enemy scales, despite its lower status of importance. While the issues at the end with the missile did leave this fight with some bumps, it's held by its own brand of tension and energy to still make the whole fight a memorable moment full of noteworthy character highlights, great team synergy, and just plain old enjoyment. I just hope that the after effects of this fight and the way that it concludes are just as pleasing. And again, I also have to give special praise to the audio work done in this episode. The bombastic new vocal track, the intense battle themes, and definitely the inspiring remix of Armed and Ready all delivered where they needed, and I can't leave this review without giving the music team some very deserving due praise. Same for the quality performances from all of the cast, with understandably the highest credit being shared by the trio in the second half of the episode. And while I think that this is definitely some of Aaron and Barbara's best work, I do want to give the voice acting gold star of the episode to Garrett Hunter. He's had his fair share of doubters regarding his past performances, and I won't lie, there has been some moments where I felt that he definitely could have been stronger. But that shouldn't mean I can't praise the guy when I feel that he does live up to what he should be offering, and I feel that he did give us his strongest performance since Volume 3, perhaps his best overall, doing a tremendous job of portraying Adam's maniacal attitude and his wounded pain with the same level of honesty and passion. And so, while the episode didn't move the plot forward all that much, it certainly made up for it in two terrific fights with plenty of character moments to applaud in an episode stacked to the brim with stellar animation and marvelous directing. Even the few hiccups that are there barely make a dent in the episode's overall quality. The volume's end is drawing closer and closer, and I'm feeling all the more sad that this outstanding season is coming to an end when we keep hitting great moment after great moment. And fingers crossed that there's still plenty of more shining moments to come before the season draws to a close. This will surely be a memorable episode for several reasons, especially with some of the personal tales of the cast. And for me personally, it's up there as one of the show's finest entries. But those are just my thoughts, and it's time to remind you to tell me yours. Did you enjoy the mech fight? What about the fight with Adam? And do you think we are getting close to Bumblebee becoming a thing? Please discuss that one question specifically with a calm mind as Yang did, and while you're sharing your comments, please hit the subscribe and bell buttons to make sure you get every new video from me as they drop, and follow me on Twitter at ThatKaitoDan for more on all things RWBY, updates on future content, and more. But until next time, have a good day or good night, and peace out.